back with the Outer Circle, and I put up a poll earlier today, only a few hours ago actually, asking if people wanted me to do my own kind of rewrite on the Age of Darkness Legacy Units PDF. Well, considering the fact that the poll resoundingly filled up pretty quickly, yeah, I thought I'd just knock it out of the park and do it. So, I'm not feeling the best right now. So I probably won't do the live stream tonight. In fact, I feel pretty terrible. But I want to smash through this and get it out there. So what we're going to do is go through page by page and just explain where I've made some changes. A couple of units I've left out. So I've ignored the Knights Errant for the moment because they just need a ground-up rewrite. And I've also left the Marauder, Bomber, and the ground attack version out of it because I just don't see them as Legion units personally. I know some people have them, but there's so few people that have them, and they're very Imperial Army, Imperial Guard. I just didn't feel like utilising them, I'll be honest. Now, anyway, on to this. So, on the left side of the screen is the original, on the right-hand side is my revised version, and I'll take you through the changes I've made as we go. So, in the Untitled Console, we had no changes, so I've included them in here anyway. Warmonger Console. So I kept the same points. I changed up the Etheric Juncture Splicer quite a bit so that after he's arrived on the table, he can actually redeploy using Deep Strike rules instead of moving. And if you do so, then after you successfully do the Deep Strike movement, then you take the test to see if your models get wounded, because otherwise the Etheric Juncture Splicer is just a terrible bit of war gear, and it's not a very good console. No one's really going to take it, I don't think. So instead, we've tried to add a little bit of flavouring to this one. Moving on. So, Castaferum Dreadnought. This one was actually a pretty easy one. So, I adjusted the points down some more to 105, because I feel that the Contemptor is not so much more expensive than this, and it offers you so much more for it. I also gave its initiative a slight boost up to 3, left the attacks at 3, I did toss up on increasing those, kept the wounds the same. And other than that, it's pretty much identical. I just made it more expensive to take, so I kept the original points for increasing the Talon, because the idea of taking Dreadnought Talons and sort of min-maxing is not something I'm a big fan of, so I've avoided that with this. So, moving on to the Spatha Attack Bike. Oh, I also condensed rules onto the same page. So, the Castaferum Dreadnought in the original PDF has rules on 2 different pages. In my version, I squeezed it into the same page for easiness for the players. Alright, so the Spatha Attack Bike. Kept it at 55 points, but we made quite a few changes here. I keep saying we, me, I gave it 2 wounds and 2 attacks base. It's got 2 Marines in it, for a start, and I toyed with giving it 3 attacks base, but it just didn't work for me. I also gave it the bulky 3 special rule. I think that's pretty self-explanatory why I did that. And apart from that, it's basically the same. Happy with the points now, though. It's a lot better as a unit, and the fact that it's now actually bulky, should be able to outnumber units and such, which is still a thing in the Horus Heresy with certain legions, should make it far superior to what it used to be. So moving on from there, the Tarantula. So the Tarantula kept it the same points. I increased Ballistic Skill to 3 because Ballistic Skill 2 is basically useless. Yeah, I just hated that. I also dropped the Augury Scanners from 20 points down to 5, because what is the point of having an in-placed gun turret designed to shoot down incoming aircraft if it can't intercept and shoot down incoming aircraft? It just seems stupid to me. I also turned the Hyperios missiles into AP2. Now, I did that because the original Hyperios missiles at AP3, I have a massive problem in 1.0 and 2.0 with Strength 7 AP3 anti-air weapons. They do hull point damage to flyers, they can't blow them up. So what I've done here is say, look, the reward for taking this unit is you have a lower ballistic skill unit, but it can actually blow flyers up. So it has an alternate use over something like, say, a Legion heavy support squad, for example, the Devastator type squad with missiles and flak. because this one can actually blow up aircraft. So it's a bit of a different, kettle of worms, bit of a plaything. Alright, moving on from there, the Indomitus Terminators. I heavily changed these ones up because I didn't like them as implemented. They were just, here's your 40k Terminators, use them. Whilst, yes, they were around in the Heresy, they were right at the end of the Heresy, and it was basically, they were settling for this version of armor. It was worse than Tartarus in regards to mobility, it was worse than Cataphracti in regards to survivability, and it was on par with Tartarus for survivability. It's slower, it's just worse armor, and it shouldn't be just getting all the toys. I don't like the idea of them having, Thunderhammer, Storm Shield combos and all of these guys as a troop's choice as well. I mean, the Proteus pattern Storm Shield is not as good as regular Storm Shields, but there's only 2 legions that have them, the Imperial Fists and the Salamanders. I mean, Blood Angels, Crimson Paladins didn't even get a shield like this. So I felt, they're an intermediate step, okay? They're kind of like Mark V power armor, but for Terminators. It's a rush hack job Terminator. It's not really the penultimate Terminator armor type. What it is it'll do the job. And so I gutted the War Gear section on it. I was happy to keep the Assault Cannon there, like a prototype Assault Cannon, but the Storm Shield and Thunderhammers had to go. Okay? If you've got Thunderhammers, I should say, they're still Thunderhammers, just not the combo of Storm Shield and Thunderhammers. For the Sergeant, is it? No, I removed it there as well. Cool. So, yeah. You can't have your cake and eat it too with them. I just don't like the concept of that, and hey, feel free to disagree in the comments below, but why should a haphazard, smash together, quick, let's just make them work Terminator unit have access to all of the war gear of all the other Terminator types and Legion Specialist war gear types? That's just silly to me. I don't approve of that at all. So Indomitus Terminator Squad, heavily depowered in that regard, but otherwise, you've still got them, you can still use them, they're still a troop's choice, they're not a line squad, they're not a scoring infantry squad, but they give you some tough guys who can harass enemy scoring units in the troop slot still. It's just you're not having a cake and eating it too. So, I also, as you can see, squeezed all the rules into the one page. So, moving on to the Avenger. So the Avenger Strike Fighter, we've gone down heavily in points, and that's really the only change that needed to be made to most of the flyers, was dropping the points significantly. Essentially what you're paying for when you paid the original 170 points was 2 las cannons, an Avenger bolt cannon, and a heavy stubber that's never going to shoot at things. So, not great. And then you were also paying on top of that for your missiles and war gear options. And that made it, you're basically pushing 200 points. Plus, if you put the Ramjet diffraction field on, you'd be at 220 points if you took Sky Strike missiles. 15 points if you took the Hellstrike missiles. So this makes it a lot more bearable, and it's incredibly fragile. Armor 10 on the sides and rear, only 3 hull points. I did consider buffing the armor because the Avenger is supposed to be more like the A10 Warthog in real life. Heavy, really solid sort of fighter that can come in, strafe a position, take a few hits, but the pilot's encased in, a titanium box, and so the plane just comes out the other side with holes in it, but otherwise good. I did toss up giving it improved armor stats, but I thought, no. The problem is I'd have to then be going and I'd be putting it up to the stats on things like Storm Eagles and Thunderhawks and stuff, and it's not as tough as those. I would have to then modify those, so instead of doing that, I've just made it cheaper to justify it. Okay, so Thunderbolt, same sort of thing again, made it cheaper from 170 down to 140. It has more firepower on the front, basically. 4 auto cannons and 2 las cannons is a fair bit of firepower. At 140 points, compare that to, say, a Dreadnought, for example. You're coming up with very similar sorts of firepower, so you don't have the survivability of one, apart from being a flyer, or the ability to be a zooming flyer, so you don't need to cost as much. Then we get to the Primaris Lightning Fighter, and again, massive points drop here, because what are you getting when you get it? 2 las cannons, that's it. Just so 2 shots. 2 las cannons shouldn't be 170 points, I'm sorry. It's just way, way too expensive. We're not trying to make overpowered units here. We're just trying to make units that people can actually play conceivably on the tabletop and do something. And yep, a lightning strike fighter with 2 Kraken Penetrator missiles could come on at 155 points, blow up a Spartan. Well, that's why Interceptor was invented. Good luck. Alright, moving on from there, we now get to the Land Raider Phobos, and the only change I felt I needed to make to this, because it's stat-wise identical to the Proteus, so I just put a note. Any Legion unit that may take a Legion Land Raider Proteus as a dedicated transport may instead take a Legion Land Raider Phobos in its place. Boom, problem solved. The reason I mention this is because you want your models to pull double duty. You shouldn't have to have a model like, say, a Land Raider, and you're like, oh, I can only use it if I'm using it in a heavy support squad slot because it is not a dedicated transport unit. Whereas this other Land Raider, which is identical in stats, armor, weapons, is a dedicated transport. Well, everyone's just going to buy the other one, and it screws over the people who already have this one. So, fixed. Done. Dusted. Alright, the Land Raider Achilles now. The Land Raider Achilles, so significant points drop here. I also changed it from 2 additional Land Raider Achilles to 1, and I modified the weapons significantly, stuck it into the same page, so should probably look at the weapon. So the original main weapon, 24 inches, is incredibly short-ranged. For an artillery unit, you're essentially getting within range of people can cross that distance and assault you in 1 turn. That's very high risk for a low reward attack, and that is a very low reward attack, let's be honest. Strength 5, AP 5, with rerolls to wound. You shoot that into something like Terminators, they're not only going to brush it off, but units like the Cataphracti are going to get to re-roll their armor saves against it. So yeah, you may get 3 or 4 wounds on the squad, and they're definitely going to make 3 or 4 saves, especially if they have, Apothecary or whatever. So, first things first, increase the range. The shard rounds I put up to 48, and the strike rounds also up to 48. Double the range. It's an artillery tank. It shouldn't be running into close assault like that. I did toss up with going with 36, but I played the Achilles a lot, the old Achilles Alpha and that, and I think the 36 inches would work, but there was nothing wrong with the 48 inches, especially now that it's lost the AP 2, Strength 8 basic shots. Yeah, it's a lot weaker. With the shard rounds, I increased it to a massive blast from a large blast, but got rid of the shred, so you're not re-rolling wounds, but you're more likely to hit more models with it. So it's rewarding you for that sort of saturation bombardment. And on the strike shots, which are kind of your anti-tank rounds, I guess you can say. Heavy 4, Sunder, but I changed it to Breaching 4+, because you've got that chance it's going to punch through a Terminator's chest, because you're firing a giant shell bigger than the Terminator's head. That's going to do damage, or you'd hope. So, easy change to make there. Alright, Basilisk Squadron. This one, I basically just dropped the points heavily on the squadron. No way it needed to be 200 points for that blast. Yeah, okay, you're not going to feel no pain against it, but you're going to get a regular save against it. So, yeah, dropped it heavily down to 120 points, and the squadron down to 105 per each additional Basilisk instead of the 185. So it's not the artillery rape train that kills everything in the middle of the battlefield in no man's land like it used to be, but it is still going to put out a decent amount of firepower, and you're still paying 330 points for 3 of them. Whereas if you'd gone with the original one as written, for 3 Basilisks, so for 3 Strength 9 AP4 shots, you would have been paying essentially around 575 points, which is a lot of points to pay for really pathetic attack. These are siege artillery. They're high explosive. They're designed for taking down fortifications, and should be treated as such, I feel, in the rules. Then we get to Medusas. So Medusas I elected to keep very expensive. Now, the reason I did this is because I wanted these to really feel different to the Basilisk. It shouldn't just be Basilisk shot, but shorter range and rending instead of shredding. Basically, you're taking the same unit at that point, but one shoots further. No, I elected to keep it expensive, but what I did here was, well, I did two changes. The centerline hull weapon, I changed from a Gravis Heavy Bolter, because it does not have a twin Heavy Bolter on the front. The model has a single Heavy Bolter, no matter what variant of Medusa you buy. That was a big stuff up on Forge World or Games Workshop, whoever wrote that's behalf. I say big stuff up. It's a silly mistake. It's not fair to call it big stuff up. So I changed that to a hull front-mounted Heavy Bolter. Easy. Then on the Siege Mortar, kept it at Strength 9 AP 4? No. What I did was I changed to Strength 9 AP 3, so now it is very dangerous against Marines. And I changed it to Breaching 4+, so if it hits Terminators, a good chance it can kill half of them. Incredibly strong? No, I still would like to add Phosphex back in, I just haven't decided how I would like to do it. But the difference here is that 3 of these is going to be that 575 points, so you're going to be 260 points, give or take, more expensive than the Legion Basilisk Squadron, so that's the trade-off. You can have a weapon which is much more deadly and more likely to kill Marines, or you can have just saturation firepower. Take your pick. And in that vein, we go to the Legion Whirlwind. So I've turned it from 1 into a squadron, dropped the points down to 60, because, let's be honest, that's what it's basically always been in points. You should not be paying 120 points for a Rhino chassis with that loadout of war gear. And that's really the only change I had to make to it, apart from making it a squadron, because you shouldn't be filling up a heavy support slot with a fucking Whirlwind at 120 points. It is just stupid. 60 points, and this is the sort of tanks I think should be cheap, because this is the sort of unit you should encourage in low points games. The attacks on it are not so powerful that it's game-breaking balance. You play this thing in 1,000 points, you play 3 of them in 1,000 points, you're not going to win the game because of having them. Okay, spending 180 of your 1,000 points on this tank, it is not winning you the mission. What it's going to do, though, is it's going to add some flavour in. It takes you back to my sort of 2nd and 3rd edition days, where the Whirlwind was a cool tank that people actually took in their armies. I used to take 2 of them back in 3rd edition, because I thought they were cool. And I miss the Whirlwind. Alright, going on from there, the Kestis Assault Ram. I cheaped out here. I just upped the transport capacity and dropped the points a little bit on the vehicle, because that's really the main change it needs. I also added Ferromantic Invulnerability. It's an assault ram, it comes in from orbit, okay, it's dropping through the atmosphere, it's designed to ram through molten holes that it's blasting into enemy spaceships' armoured hulls. I think Ferromantic Invulnerability, like the Achilles, and I just cut-pasted the Achilles exactly, you can even see Achilles still in there, slight typo on my behalf, I'm as bad as Games Workshop. I've done that because, yeah, it's just common sense. You shouldn't be shooting this thing down with melter guns and stuff like that. Melter guns should be bouncing off this thing. And look at the size of it. If it is huge, a Kestis Assault Ram, yeah, it should probably be able to transport that many Marines. So for the sake of simplicity, without writing a whole new special rule for it, it can take 22. There you go. Can fit your Terminators or whatever inside it. Okay, going on from there. Malkador Assault Tanks. Basically a big points drop. They're not competitive with the Kratos at 245 points. They are competitive and not an auto-include at 225. So, pretty basic there what I've done. So, going on from there, the Legion Minotaur. Minotaur is a personal favourite tank. And so what I did was I took the concepts that I had on the original Basilisk, and I've just changed it up to 280 points, gave it more hull points, because why is it the same hull points as a Basilisk? This thing's huge. It's a Malkador chassis in size. So, increase the hull points, and I made it a massive blast weapon. It's also twin-linked, it's shred, it's pinning. It's going to cause some wounds, but it's not going to break the game, which is what I feel most tanks should be designed with the thought in mind. Alright, Stormblade, sorry. So, coming to all these super heavy tanks, I decided to keep the points pretty much the same across the board on all of them in relation to one another. The big thing here was dropping the points down, so every one of them got at least a 200 point deduction over what they were, because they were more expensive than Legion equivalent units, which had better everything. So that was silly. So straight away, big points deduction here. they're now 100 points cheaper than the Falchion, Fellblade, Fellglaive, essentially, which they should be. So the main change here, of course, is I've changed out the incorrect las cannon arrays in the original PDF to the sponsored 20 heavy bolters and las cannons, and I've given back the plasma blast gun as 2 firing modes: strength 9 AP3, ordnance 1, massive blast 7 inches, breaching 4+. So more or less the same. But then I gave it the focused beam instead of the diffused. So Ordnance 1 with Sunder, so it can punch through vehicles. It's a large blast, 5 inches, and pinning. At 550 points, yeah, it can kill Terminator squads, but it ain't going to break the game. And if you waste the shot killing a tank, it is capable of doing it with Sunder, but yeah, it wouldn't be my first preference. Alright, going down, the Thunderhawk Transporter. I don't think I changed anything on the Thunderhawk Transporter. I think, oh no, one change. I changed the 4 turret-mounted heavy bolters to Gravis heavy bolters, because I'm pretty sure they were twin-linked heavy bolters on the old model. I'd have to double-check, but hey, I just think it's better. Okay, going on from there, the Legion Bane Blades. As I said, I skipped the Marauders, because they're not Legion units, and they're from the 36th Millennium. Bane Blade here. Again, 200 point reduction, and the Bane Blade Cannon, I turned it into a massive blast instead of a large blast. I think that's pretty common sense why, and I dropped it to AP3. I mean, it's a giant battle cannon. Should be able to kill power armor. Look at the size of the thing, seriously. It's as big as a Rhino, the cannon alone. Alright. Bain Hammer. 200 point reduction. And again, it's not the exact points I would give them, but considering the writers felt it so important to make every one of these the exact same points, I have kept that theme, more or less. The Tremor Cannon basically didn't change. I did increase the transport capacity on the vehicle up to 20 because it's got a pretty big open area to transport models in. So why not, I figured. Alright, Legion Stormlord. So same thing, increased the capacity on the amount of models it can carry, but otherwise kept it pretty much the same. We're not trying to make these, again, overpowered units, we're trying to make them competitive within the landscape, not tanks you would never take. They shouldn't be auto-includes, but they also shouldn't be, oh, you took that, cool, you paid 200-300 points more than you should have, and I'm going to fill that up with better units, because that's just unfair. Alright, Legion Shadow Sword. So, just like I said the other day in previews, drop the points heavily, down to 550. We've gone out 300 points, and we're still only 100 points cheaper than the Falchion. Remember, the Falchion has a twin-linked volcano cannon, moves 2 inches further, has additional frontal hull armor, and also has better sponsored weapons. So, I think being 100 points cheaper instead of 200 points more expensive is a fair trade. Then we get to the Storm Sword, and we've actually dropped this even more because the main gun just didn't compete, at least with the other Storm Lord and that. They have transport capacity, so you can justify a few extra points over, say, other super heavies. But the Storm Sword, no way known. This thing should be the price of something like a Shadow Sword. So, yeah, 50 points deduction over a Shadow Sword, essentially, just to make it viable. The Mercarius Heavy Tank Squadron, 600 points for a single 6 hull point tank. Compare that to a Spartan, and it comes up very, very short. So, big change here. Drop the points on the Mercarius by half, and drop the points on the additional Mercarius from 580 to 280. Then on the main guns, again, Mercarius Battle Cannon is a giant-ass battle cannon, and with 24 inches range is incredibly short, so I thought, if you're getting into the danger zone, you should be able to do some damage, so I put it down to AP3 instead of the stupid AP4. This edition hates templates. Personal conspiracy time, I think they're nerfing the hell out of all these template weapons, because, well, one, they want to encourage more infantry on the battlefield, not have them deleted. A noble goal, but there is a middle ground. And they've made them so bad here, I can only assume it, so when they go to Heresy version 3.0, they can get rid of them entirely and go for a no blast template stuff edition like 9th edition or 8th edition is, which is not what Heresy players want. So if you make it so blasts are terrible, maybe you can convince them to do what's against their own desires. That's my conspiracy theory. The Vanquish Battle Cannon, I think I kept the same, and the Mercarius Rotary Cannon, I changed from breaching 6+, which is essentially rending, to breaching 5+, just a little bit better, because it's a giant minigun. It's like a Vulcan Mega Bolter in size. Then the Mercarius Omega. So this was a funny one. It essentially was very, very expensive for a plasma cannon shot. So I've dropped the points by half like I did on the previous Mercarius, because I mean, come on, compare this to a Spartan. Same sort of points you're paying for it, with way less armor, no flare shields, no transport capacity. A decent main gun, yes, but it's not a game-winning tank, okay? So, change that up a little bit, and I got rid of the gets hot, because come on, with the size of it shouldn't be getting hot. If you want me to turn it into a plasma blast gun on this hull, then I'll make it gets hot. The Crassus Armoured Assault Transport, so this one here, transport capacity was good. It was just the points that really was a bit because again, competing with a Spartan, okay, it's super heavy, it's got a little bit more hull points, but it has nowhere near the survivability. Arguably has far worse firepower, because let's face it, it's got little nipple heavy bolters on it. No, so changed that up, made it a lot cheaper, basically, to counter for that fact. Yeah, it's a super heavy, but it shouldn't be twice the cost of Spartan, or well, twice the cost of Land Raider. Then we get to the Praetor Armoured Assault Launcher, which I think this is the last one. Yeah. So 650 points. I dropped down to 550, but I gave it back its 3 firing modes. I changed the names of them a little bit to Obliterator, Saturation, and Penetrator rounds. So Obliterator rounds, 72 inches range, strength 7 AP4, same as the original version. So Ordnance 1, Barrage, Massive Blast 7 inches, Pinning, Rending 6+. Saturation mode is Heavy 3, Strength 5, AP5, Massive Blast. So Saturation versus Obliterator. Obliterator is going to cause damage. Strength 7 and Rending and Pinning, because it's Ordnance weapon as well. It's coming in and just striking something with death from above. The Saturation is the, hey, maybe instead of going for that option, here is another viable alternative. Yeah, it's weaker. It's only Strength 5. It's only AP5. It doesn't have Rending. It doesn't have Pinning. But you can fire a lot of shots with it, because it's doing this big missile bombardment of an area, which I thought was cool. And then you've got the Penetrator, which is Strength 8 AP4, Heavy 4, Sunder, and Breaching 4+. So sort of like an anti-tank Kraken Penetrator type thing, without just going to a Kraken Penetrator's stats. Because, you know, it's a rocket launcher tank, and it's super heavy, and it should have rules that actually reflect it, because at 650 points, it is the price of something like a Felshin, and a Felshin has better front armor, better side armor, 50% more hull points, it moves further, it has a twin-linked volcano cannon, which is incredibly good compared to the Praetor launcher. This is the thing, if you want people to try a variety of different units and not overpower them or make units a must-take, then the best way to do it is to give them viable alternatives, and so that's what I've aimed for here. Anyway, I'll put all of these slides, my modified ones, up on Facebook, so people who come to our Facebook page can view them there. If I put them up on YouTube, you just won't be able to read them. They're already low enough resolution. Yeah, I do apologise, but it is what it is. Apart from that, thank you all for watching the episode. I want your thoughts and feedback in the comments below. Again, we're not looking for perfection here. We're just looking to improve on what I feel was a very poor job in the initial PDF. I will go further with Cat when I'm feeling a bit more up to it. We will go through and do a live stream and actually talk about all the Specialist Legion units at a later date. Probably sometime this week or next weekend. I promise we'll get there. Anyway, that's all from me, Mac with the Circle. Hope you all enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you all in the next one.